Welcome to Capes, Cows and Masks. I'm Jake, and I'm joined by Dave, and this is the show where we uncover the world of soups and science fiction. The war of the multiverses has begun. We go deep on the news that Doctor Strange and Electro have been cast in the next Spider-Man film, and what this could possibly mean for the MCU. We also discuss the announcement of the Green Lantern core series coming to HBO Max and the new Invincible trailer. But our main topic today is our spoiler review of The Boys Season 2. So get the kettle going, have a cuppa, and let's spank the bastards. Hello. Welcome to Cape Cows and Masks. Hello, Dave.
Hello, how are you? Or
Yeah.
hello there, as I should say, as General Kenobi.
General Kenobi. How's it going, man?
It's going good. The other day, I was actually thinking of Star Wars quotes. I was thinking of just doing something menial around the house, and in my head, I was like, "You might be able to complete this." I was like, "Can it be done?" And then it was like in my head, I was like, thinking too many Star Wars quotes. Can you complete the line, Jake?
No. You cannot.
He will join us or die.
That's a good scene, because
Yeah.
Vader's fully fucking around with Palpatine in that scene.
Yeah. Always fun. And you get the whole, let's compare Ian McDiarmid compared to that.
To the ape.
Yeah, the original version.
Oh, that was the special editions. They always add new things to talk about. Yeah, man, I'm pretty good. You know, I'm still same situation here. I'm not officially in lockdown, but I've pretty much locked down myself and only going when I need to go out. So just watching loads of movies, and we're in spooky season.
Yeah.
So I've been watching a bunch of horrors. You know, rewatched the Blair Witch Project, which I haven't seen in years. It's still terrifying. Watched some old classics like Nosferatu, Silence of the Lambs, Midsummer. Rewatched that one again. So yeah, just pretty spooky and horror for me. And obviously The Boys, but we'll get into that a bit later.
Yes, definitely.
What about you, man? What you been watching? What you been doing?
Some stuff has been like, prep for other stuff that I've been like writing or working on. So it was obviously, again, going through some old classics like you were with Charlie Chaplin films, which sort of ties into kind of like, the political season we find ourselves in with the US elections and stuff, which is always fun. And then, yeah, it was kind of just having a break from story stuff. I was kind of going through some more documentary series and stuff like that. So I was a bit late to the party on it, but I really enjoyed the Imagineering story on Disney Plus. I've been meaning to watch that since it launched, and I loved it. It was so good,
wonderful. They're doing the Lord's work over there. Like it's insane. Like and just the entire history of it as well.
Yeah, I was really amazed because I've only been to Disney World, Florida, and that was literally for just one day. But obviously, you can just tell from videos and stuff like how much detail Disneyland and Disney World has. But yeah, watching those series, it takes it to another level because you do realize how much those Imagineers bring to the table. And yeah, I was just surprised how interesting and how captivating it was as a series. It's just talking about theme parks, but it was really engaging. That like at the end of each episode, they were quite transparent, aren't they, about the company went through quite a difficult time at this point, or we were skipping out on certain costs and that kind of stuff. So tip my hat to Disney as well for being quite upfront about when they've been a bit cheap or they've like let themselves down a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's very rare you see a sort of company come out like that, especially if like the documentary is produced by Disney themselves. Sometimes it might come out from a different point of view if it's done by a third party, but most of the time, if it's done by the actual company, they're like, oh, yeah, it's all great over here.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I commend them for that. I tell you what, though, because there have been some criticisms about Disney Plus and like people saying there's not enough original content. To a certain degree, I agree with that. But you have to admit, all their behind-the-scenes stuff they've been doing lately, from Imagineering, the Mando stuff. I think they did one for Frozen as well, which was pretty good.
Yeah, they also got that prop culture, which I think is, I want to sort of see that next now after seeing
the
Imagineering.
prop culture, and they also did one, which was like a documentary film, but then they did like a mini series. It was like little 5-minute episodes after the documentary, and that was One Day at Disneyland. Where, like each episode, it focuses on like a different area of like the Disney parks and stuff like that. So I think on that regard, they've knocked it out the park, really. But yeah, I do want maybe more original narrative content.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, I can understand from the point of view of they want to keep on brand and, they don't want to diversify too much. But obviously now there are rumors that they will sort of try and bring in new sections to develop more of their 20th Century Fox sort of line and those movies, maybe more adult content, which, I think would be interesting. I can understand up till now why they haven't done it. And obviously in America, they've also got Hulu as well, which sort of changes things up as well. But
which Disney own like 60% of Hulu or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I read something the other day and they were like, if they were looking at their total subscribers between everything they own, they had about 100 million. But Disney Plus has 60 million. But if they're counting in ESPN and Hulu and, wherever else they might have like little shares in, then it is almost the Netflix numbers, but not quite. Not quite.
Yeah, not quite there. I mean, this is why I think with the recent news of them dropping Soul on Disney Plus for free, instead of doing the Premier Access, I kind of think that's a really good idea on their part because, all right, if you absolutely have to release the film, release it on Disney Plus. If you're not going to wait and release it next year. But giving it for free, I think they've probably looked at what happened with Mulan, and they probably thought, if we put it on there for free, we might gain more subscribers than people actually, purchasing the film.
Yeah, and it's also keeping subscribers as well, isn't it? It's so easy just to cancel your subscription. So, I think, a lot of people will just say, oh, well, it was easy enough for Trolls World Tour to do it. It's like, well, have we really heard much about Trolls World Tour since those initial numbers?
No,
and
it's
even
no
though
Disney.
No, and even those were from Universal, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt. Scoob, that didn't seem to do that well. So there's nothing to say that animated films are doing that well on PVOD. So again, I can understand that decision to put it for free on Disney Plus. I am glad because I think it looks like a gorgeous film. Like the new trailer for it, I don't know if you've seen, but parts of it, I'm like, that looks real. Like, wow, like the animation looks beautiful, which I think that's why it's a shame we won't get it on the big screen. But at the same time, Disney Plus is very good for quality, so I know that on Christmas Day or Boxing Day or whatever, it's going to look nice and crisp on that 4K stream that they do on my 4K TV. So at the same time, I'm like, it's going to look good at least at home.
Yeah, for people who people like us who are quite lucky to have 4K TVs, it's going to be great. I also think it's like, PR-wise, this is an incredibly smart move for Disney to release it for free on Christmas. It's like this is our gift to you. So
especially if they get the Oscar for Soul as well, because that's probably their biggest objective is like get this out so we can get the Oscar.
yeah. Well, I'm still unclear whether or not the Oscars are going to accept like straight to streaming films.
Yeah, I think they said they have because there's so many on Netflix. They kind of have to. So they said that this year they've laxed the rules on theatrical releases because of the pandemic. So
okay, well, let's get into the news then, because we do have some news to talk about, plenty of TV stuff to keep us occupied during this lockdown. But first, we're going to go to the big screen. And the question I have for you, David, is what the hell is going on with the Spider-Man 3 film?
Oh, God. The question is, what's going on in the Spider-Verse and which alternate reality are we in? Because I'm losing track.
I have no idea if we're doing the Spider-Verse or the multiverse or the madness multiverse. Or it's all over the place. And this comes hot off the heels that Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange will be returning in Spider-Man 3. And then this is all but confirmed. Jamie Foxx coming back as Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. We'll get into the other rumored, because those are the only ones that are sort of confirmed, but there's plenty of other rumors out there. What are your initial thoughts of bringing in Doctor Strange and then, most shockingly, Jamie Foxx as Electro? He's bringing back the blue.
Yeah, maybe most electrifyingly, Jamie Foxx. Yeah, it really probably, mentioning those two together like that, you know, what's my thoughts on both of them? They probably couldn't be like further apart from each other in some ways, in some respect, because though I did see something that made me dislike the Doctor Strange announcement a bit more, but I'll go into that. But yeah,
I know what you're going to say.
But anybody who knows me knows that I do not like the Amazing Spider-Man films. I didn't like number one. I know a lot of people have a lot of feelings for that film, and they didn't think it was as bad, but I thought I just didn't like either of them. And yeah, so my initial reaction was like, what the hell? Why would you bring back one of the most problematic and maybe worst villains that we've had in a Spider-Man film? And yeah, I think there's some people making the case that, you know, Kevin Feige or the people at Sony want to give Jamie Foxx this sort of second chance because he is an Oscar-winning actor and he has
great actor, man.
Had a bit of a comeback recently. We were talking about Soul. He is in Soul. He's had that Project Power on Netflix. So
Baby
you know he
Driver.
has. Yeah, exactly. So you know he has had a resurgence. So I can see from that point of view why they want to bring him back. And like you said, he said he's not blue, but at the same time, it's like, well, if you're from this multiverse, etc., then how does that work, kind of thing? How do you sort of explain, like, oh yeah, he's from an alternate universe, but he's a different version of the character that you saw before? It's like, well, what's the point? You may as well just have him as Electro in Tom Holland's universe, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean, because then you're setting up so it's Electro, but not the Electro from Amazing Spider-Man 2, even though it's the same actor. Yeah,
exactly. And you know, I think, like I said, some people can make the argument of like, oh yeah, but you know, he looked cool, or the action scenes were cool. It's like, look, this whole like, you know, it's my birthday, I'm gonna blow the candles out. Nothing was cool about that. It was just like, and I don't think it's even like, I'm trying to think of another example where you get like, I don't know, maybe you could say Christopher Eccleston in Thor: The Dark World or something. You could say that they didn't have the room or they didn't have the opportunity to properly flesh that character out, which I think would be understandable in that situation. So if they said, oh, we're bringing back Christopher Eccleston, you'd be like, okay, yeah, fair enough. He didn't really get much room to do anything. But again, I don't know how much Jamie Foxx was involved with it, but he made those decisions to play that character the way he did. You know, he was happy enough to play that strange, nerdy character, which was really cliched and really silly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think there's a lot of blame onto Mark Webb as well.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that's why I'm assuming with this deal that they're kind of like, oh, sorry for what happened in terms of, you know, making you do that. Yeah. You know, here's this new opportunity. So like I said, if he appears and he's just in a green suit and he's just the way he is and he is no blue, then... Because personally, I've always preferred Electro as that kind of look of just... Not necessarily the lightning bolts coming off his head, you know, that's a bit cheesy, but I've never liked that entire Human Torch kind of Electro where it embodies him kind of thing. I've never been a fan of that, even in like the animated series. So I prefer it if Jamie Foxx is just, you know, himself, just in a suit, and he just like has yellow electric. He can like Stormfront. He just, you know, he just zaps it off.
I don't know. I'm kind of old school in the way that I want to see like a modern take of the goofy suit. And partly because, you know, when they announced Mysterio for Far From Home, I was always skeptical of how they're going to make that suit look sort of, you know...
Yeah.
How are they going to make it work? Because it's stupid. He's a giant fishbowl. Like,
yeah.
So I don't know how you're going to make that work in live action, but they did, and it looked fucking amazing. So I'm willing to give, again, Marvel. I always give Marvel the benefit of the doubt because every time I've questioned them, they knock it out the park.
Yeah.
So I'm willing then to give the benefit of the doubt on that. However, the whole bringing the Jamie Foxx thing and Doctor Strange as well, I just think with this film, it just seems like there's too much going on in this film. Like, because if you're going to bring in Doctor Strange, all right, you've got the multiverse of madness going on, or it's right round the corner. And then if you're going to introduce the multiverse, you're going to bring Electro. Again, hinting to the Sinister Six stuff. So what, are you going to start doing that as well? And let's not forget, at the end of Far From Home, Peter's identity is released to the world. So that needs to be cleared up. So I'm just thinking, this film just seems like it's a lot. I don't know if they truly know where they want to go with this, or if they're just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. It also seems like a bit like, oh my God, DC are doing the multi thing. Let's fucking do it. Like they basically, it's almost like a beat for beat thing with what DC doing with Flash, where they're like, here's all the Batmans. Like,
it's just what happened with Civil War all over again. Batman v Superman led to Civil War.
Exactly, and it just seems like, oh shit, we got to do what they're doing. Let's make our own multiverse and possibly bring in all the the legacy characters from the previous stuff. So I don't know, man. It just seems like a mess for me. But at the same time, again, if Marvel Studios are involved, I've got to think they've got some sort of a handle on this and know what they want to do. Yeah. Or if Sony is just like, nah, we're just going to do what we want to do. Like,
exactly. I think for me as well, what worries me is the fact that we have no preconceived idea of a live-action multiverse for Spider-Man, because I think we've said before, isn't it? To me, I see a Doctor Strange multiverse and Spider-Verse as two different things. So it's weird that they're melding those. And to me, I don't know, it's almost as if Sony and Marvel are going, oh yeah, well, people have seen the Spider-Verse animated film, so everyone knows what the Spider-Verse is now. And it's like, well, no, not really. Like that film, despite, its fans and loads of, it didn't really make as much money as a Spider-Man live action film.
No, of course
we've had Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland. None of those films have ever even hinted at a Spider-Verse. So the animated series have all had their sort of, played around with that, in the Spider-Verse, and that's a big part of the character in some respect. But the animated film almost solidified it as kind of like, oh, this is an animated kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So to then expect us to go from a story that's been set up as a contained world story, where Spider-Man has never even heard of the concept of any of the Spider-Men, apart from maybe that one tease of Miles Morales in Homecoming, which was barely to say it was like a Spider-Man tease. It was more just a Miles Morales tease. That was the only thing we've ever had. So I think that's where it's hard to buy into that as well. On the side of Doctor Strange, I do support it in the sense that I think that character makes sense. I do love that somebody pointed out that
they're both in New York, so
yeah, exactly. And I think there's a history of that in the comics and the series, isn't it? Like the old 90s cartoon, they sort of teamed up. I think that's the first time I ever saw experienced Doctor Strange was in that animated.
Both characters created by Steve Ditko as well.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense. And I think that if you continue the relationship that was in Endgame, which was quite fun, of like, are they going to use their made-up names and that kind of stuff would be good. But yeah, it's just also the fact that people are saying that as the mentor character, it's like, are you literally just replacing Tony Stark with the guy who is infamously looks like Tony Stark with, the same beard and everything?
Both played Sherlock.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm just like, do we really want to see Peter be mentored by an existing MCU character again, which is kind of like a cocky, similar character to Tony Stark? I'm like, can we not have Peter on his own two legs for once, please?
Yeah, man, I'm totally with you. Like, as much as I've enjoyed the MCU Spider-Man films and his appearances in other Marvel films, I still feel as if we haven't got that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man film yet. There's a little bit of that in Homecoming, like sort of within the first act of that film.
Yeah.
But but the film wasn't rooted in that. It was sort of still Peter's journey of trying to be like Tony in a way. And so I'm with you. I want to see more friendly neighborhood Spider-Man stuff. I don't think every Spider-Man film has to be an Avengers level, type of film. Because then it diminishes when we do get to an Avengers style film. If you know what I
and
mean.
it also diminishes what they set up in that they want these films to be kind of high school, Breakfast Club type
John
films, which
Hughes
are like,
type of flicks, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So
And again, we got a bit of that in Homecoming, and all those moments I did really like, and I'm like, yes, that's fucking it, that you nailed it. But give me more of that. And Far From Home, again, you had moments of that, but because it wasn't in New York, in America, in the actual school, it felt a bit more grander scale, you could say.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I do have my issues, but again, let's wait and see, because Marvel have proved many people wrong before.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd be, in terms of Sinister Six, I think it'd be all right if they just have like Vulture, Mysterio, and Electro, and then they sort of tease the other characters that might come up.
Well, this is the thing. You've also got the issue of Sony doing their own universe with like Venom and Morbius.
Yeah.
Like, you have to, like, I'm sorry, but Sony are going to want to bring those guys into the Sinister Six, especially Venom.
Yeah. And that's where I just don't see that aspect working, especially Morbius, because to me, again, I don't know if there's a history in the comics of it, but it just doesn't, to me, the Sinister Six are like Doc Ock and those kind of characters. I don't see Morbius or even Venom fitting into that. It kind of does just appear as of like, oh, well, this is what we got and let's deal with it kind of thing, which I think, no, like, set it up properly as you should do, which has been how Marvel has been successful so far. And I think the further we get away from a Marvel film, the more you do get that doubt of like, well, maybe the cracks will start to show. Maybe they will start to falter a bit because, they've had such a good run. I was thinking about it the other day with Endgame, and I was still thinking that, it is maddening how good Thanos is as a character. I was thinking of that, like, the lines he has in that,
In both flicks, Infinity War and Endgame, his story arc is insane. Like,
exactly. So, for them to pull off that so well, I think some people are in a way expecting them to fail almost with Phase 4. And obviously, while I don't wish that at all, and from what I've seen so far, I think they're on the right track. But this is the only thing that sort of like makes me a bit nervous. The one thing I did see on the villain side of thing, I will say lastly, is somebody, I think on Twitter or something, said, can you imagine if Kraven the Hunter was hunting Spider-Man across the multiverse? I saw
that, yeah.
That could be quite fun. That's quite a funny idea. But again, I think you'd have to make Kraven the main villain, etc. Not just have like, oh, well, we've also got Electro, that.
Kraven deserves, well, not his own movie as a solo movie, but he deserves to be the main antagonist, the main threat throughout the whole film.
Yeah, definitely, because he's been teased for so long as like, it was him and Mysterio for ages as like the only two left. And I think the fact that they're still now not considering him in some ways, I think is crazy. But yeah, and don't even get me started on the rumors about Dane DeHaan. Like,
oh no, let's not go into that, because the last thing I'll say in this is that I would actually much would have preferred the third Spidey film to be two story arcs, and you got the one story arc of him trying to cover up his identity in a way, make people think he's not actually Spider-Man, and have Kraven lingering over that. None of this multiverse stuff. I just don't like. I just think the animated movie Into the Spider-Verse was so perfect. Like, genuinely, it's my favorite Spider-Man film. It's one of my favorite comic book movies in general. It's just that good. I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
Just keep doing that. They've got a sequels planned and TV shows planned. So just keep doing that. Sony, you're doing really well on that. Just don't overdo it. I think.
Yeah.
Don't, just because everyone wants to do a multiverse now.
Yeah, I think that you could even argue that they could. I think they could pull it off. Say if they just brought in Miles Morales as part of the story, so he's friends with Miles Morales throughout the film, like you said, but he's dealing with all of that, keeping his identity secret stuff throughout the film, and then maybe Miles Morales has got this history of understanding the Spider-Verse a bit more, which people will buy into because again of the animated film, but it's not expecting you to buy into the entire concept straight away.
No.
And then maybe just at the end of the film, he's like, oh, hey, I've got some other friends which might help. And you get like two other versions of Spider-Man just for the final battle or something. That I can buy into. But again, like you said, throwing in Doctor Strange, Electro, all of this stuff as well. You're like, what's going on?
Yeah, it seems like it should be like Endgame length of like 3 hours just to get all this stuff in.
Yeah. And it's also the fact that this is now about the film. I think that's what makes me like shocked is that you think, okay, well, maybe these are just all ideas are being thrown around, or they're still shaping the script, or they're still organizing this. But
No,
if
they're filming.
yeah. So if they're, they're doing it, you're like, right, well, they clearly have an entire plan, and they know who they need and who they want, etc. So
Yeah, I don't know. I can't see. I see an ugly divorce coming up soon between Marvel and Sony.
yeah,
I see
we need
it.
some the Batman level set photos to try and get more of an idea of what's going on.
In his robe.
Yeah, we need Spider-Man in his dressing gown just to know what's fully going on in this Spider-Verse.
Oh god! And I love the pictures of the stunt guys on top of the liver building as well.
Yeah, just film Spider-Man far from home, literally far from home in England, and there'll be plenty of set photos to go around.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of the Batman, let's go over to DC. And quite big news, actually. I think we heard this news sort of semi-announced when they were announcing HBO Max. But the Green Lantern Corps is getting its own series on HBO Max from Mark Guggenheim and Seth Graham Smith. So, I'm going to let you start this one off, Dave. What are your initial thoughts on getting a Green Lantern Corps series? They said it's going to be spanning decades of history over the Green Lantern Corps and focusing not on Hal Jordan, not on Jon Stewart, not even Kyle Rayner.
Yeah.
But they're going for Guy Gardner, Jessica Cruz, Simon Baz, and the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott.
Yeah, that was the bit that made me a bit more interested in the fact that, like we were discussing, you don't want it just to be like, hey, here's the Hal Jordan show, and then he's going to start appearing in
here's another white
films. Yeah, or even if they did it with Jon Stewart, it would just come across as like, those other shows that they've done, like The Flash and The Arrow and, the CW kind of stuff, in which you're just like, do we really want to see a sort of, where they sort of just do it as a token thing, like, oh yeah, we're doing Jon Stewart, but it's in this TV show that will never have any link to the films, that kind of thing. So I think the fact that they're leaving all of those characters out of it is a lot better. I think it does depend on,
Do you think they're just not using these characters because they're maybe saving them for films or maybe have plans for them later?
Yeah, I would think so, because again, you don't want to get into that idea of like, oh, well, there's two Jon Stewarts now, etc., because there is that barrier that Marvel has managed to overcome, in which, do you have a TV level actor who's able to level up to the films, and streaming has allowed you to have that in between. And we've seen with recent Marvel casting that they can have these either newcomers who just then don't have that issue, or actors who are already quite big in movies, so you wouldn't see it as like a going up or down, because they're like a quality actor who's had experience in both. So yeah, I think that makes sense, because then they don't have to deal with the complications of setting up that character. They can still leave the Green Lantern to its own story in the films, and they can see how successful this series is as a way of testing it. Because I think if that awful version of the film before was anything to go by, then it kind of is that you do need to test out the audience to see if they're more into the Green Lantern Corps stuff, or they're more into Green Lantern the hero. Mm-hmm. And personally, I've always found myself more interested in Green Lantern the man, the kind of idea of kind of like in the Avatar series, etc., the idea of like, oh, this person who takes on the mantle. I was more interested in, like you take on, he finds the ring from the previous owner, he takes on that mantle. But I always found it a bit, a bit overbearing sometimes when they have so many Green Lanterns and they have all the different colors and stuff like that. So that's why I've never been as drawn to the franchise as much, because they just have so many iterations, so many different characters, and the fact that they can be like, yeah, and let's all fly in. There's like 100-man army, and we can all do whatever we want with these rings, kind of thing. So that side of things makes me a bit worried as to whether, again, it'll be too much. And I think that you need to kind of do it like in a way that, say, Guardians or Captain Marvel, you kind of just keep it contained into one group. So the fact that they are talking about like Jessica Cruz and those kind of characters, I hope that they do make it just like a team sort of thing, like 4 characters, 4 Green Lanterns, which aren't tied to like a massive, army kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
which I think again, like you kind of had glimmers of in the film, which then made it a bit hard to digest, especially for general audiences. They were kind of like, oh, what is this film kind of thing. I think it's a lot easier to say like, here is the Green Lantern. Second film, oh, here is like the other Green Lanterns. You meet a few of them. The third film, then you start to get like the army of Green Lanterns, that kind of thing. So I think for me, it's just all about, as long as they take it slowly and they pace it out correctly and they tell it in the right way and not just throw too much at us all at once kind of thing. I think that's the main thing I would say from this. But I am excited for characters like Jessica Cruz. I think from what I've seen in like animated stuff before, they're quite fun characters and they're quite interesting. They've got quite compelling storylines because they're from more diverse backgrounds. But we'll just have to see whether some of it comes across as gimmicky or whether it comes across as genuine as well.
See, I'm with you on some points and disagree with you on other points. I think you make a lot of good points in terms of like it can get really confusing because there is a lot of lore behind like the Green Lantern stuff, like you said, with the different rings, the different colors, and what emotions they sort of represent and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it's perfect for a TV show, because they've got the time to, take their time with this story, explore the lore, learn about the history of the Green Lantern Corps. And where I disagree with you, I've always been a Green Lantern guy. I love Green Lantern. Hal Jordan is my Green Lantern for me. But I'm a huge cosmic DC guy. I love like the New Gods, and I've always been a Green Lantern Corps guy because I just love sci-fi and weird shit in space.
Yeah.
So I think, exploring that a bit more, I think it gives it more diversity because you're not focused on one person's point of view. You're going to have a lot of different perspectives. I think it's really interesting that they've used Guy Gardner because from a fan perspective, he is the most disliked Green Lantern. He's a bit of an asshole, a bit of a misogynist in a way. So it's going to be really interesting pairing him up with maybe a Jessica Cruz, who's, she's a Latina woman. She ain't going to take his shit.
Yeah, well, that's what made me like the idea of it being a group dynamic, is that you could have that bouncing off them, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got Simon Baz, who is of Muslim religion. So you've got that there as well. Alan Scott is interesting. Now, Alan Scott, first of all, he is a gay man. So you're going to have, the LGBTQ representation there as well. But he was the first Green Lantern, and then it makes me wonder as well, because they said they're going to span decades of storytelling, if they're maybe going to do, like, him at the beginning, like for like 2 episodes or 3 episodes, and then go into like Guy Gardner, and then maybe go into Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz or something like that. I don't know if that's what they're sort of going for, like maybe almost like an anthology type of thing.
Yeah,
I don't know if that would work or not. But at the same time, I don't know how Alan Scott would team up with these guys, considering takes place, quite a few years further back. So yeah, I'm not too sure, but I am really excited for this because, HBO Max, they've shown us with Raised by Wolves, Lovecraft Country, and some other shows out there. They're looking at spending the money. And as we've seen with, the latest few announcements, the spin-off shows of the Batman, Dune, Peacemaker, all these other properties, they're going full on for HBO Max. They want this to be a huge success. I did say at the beginning they had a very interesting launch. I would say quite a weak launch, but I think it looks like they've realized that and gone, right, we need to pump out these shows shows that people want to watch. And I think this is, give me a Green Lantern show with all that fucking money behind it, like it's like all due respect to the CW shows, some of them are really good, but the budget sometimes just prohibits them from getting to that extra level. And if you're going to throw Raised by Wolves, Game of Thrones style budget behind Green Lantern, I'm fucking here for it, man. Like, let's go. Let's get some weird shit. Let's get really creative with what they can conjure up with their rings. I don't want to just see like a baseball mitten or like a fire truck or something like that. Let's get creative. Let's do some weird shit.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like up till now, I've sort of yet to see a version of the story which I really like cling to, which, like I said, is weird because I do kind of like that crazy sci-fi stuff. Um, but for me, and this isn't linked to obviously that live action film, but I've never liked the whole like, oh, something's coming up me and let's just make my ring into like a machine gun, like that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, or like let's just make a tank. I've always preferred the more like simplistic kind of like a hammer or like a rope and that kind of stuff. I prefer that kind of aspect of it just being this energy that forms basic shapes. I don't like this idea of just like, oh, it just turns into a gun. It's like, what? So I think as long as, like you said, I'm fully on board as long as they get into the lore, they take their time, they set it up properly, they don't just throw everything at the wall too soon. So you set up maybe like this team, and the council, that kind of stuff, but you just don't go in all green, guns blazing.
Yeah.
So it's just setting it up properly. And like I said, and then if they set up that world effectively there, then they can more easily springboard a Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart story from that world into the movies, which I think, on reflection is a good way of doing that, because it's such as again that terrible movie showed that it's very hard to set up that entire world and lore in just one film.
Yeah. So yeah, if they then launch into a Green Lantern movie, people will be a bit more familiar with the whole history. I mean, all you need to do is do a prologue in that first episode. 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Something like Peter Jackson did for The Lord of the Rings. You watch that prologue, you're like, cool, I know the history, I know where we are, let's go.
Yeah, and I think Game of Thrones is a good example as well, because you've got so many different houses and cultures and parts of Westeros, but again, because they've got the time with the series to just literally like visit each house one by one, and it's not like episode 1 is you meet every single house in one episode. You gradually you go to the Vale in like episode 5, you go to King's Landing in episode 2 or 3 and learn more about it. So again, I think as long as they do that approach of gradually building it all and not throwing in too many lanterns and too many characters, then I think it would work okay then as well. And even from a budget point of view, I can't imagine that they're going to be like, let's have like 20 Green Lanterns flying around who can all do the same thing. I'm assuming that they're going to want to do the more approach of like that council is there to advise them, and they don't do anything special effects wise, but the team of 4 or 5.
They're just a bunch of blue aliens sitting in a circle.
Exactly, yeah. So just keep it at them and the core team, and then maybe introduce other colors and teams later down the line.
Yeah, man. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Can't wait for that to come out. HBO Max, please come to the UK because we need the content. Okay, so we'll move on to some more TV. This is another short trailer, just over 1 minute, for Amazon's Invincible, based on Robert Kirkman's comic series. Arguably his second most favorite after The Walking Dead. This is animated, this is gory, this is bloody, this is vulgar, but at the same time, this trailer seems like it's got a sweetness and innocence to it as well. It's sort of, I kind of feel it's got like a coming-of-age vibe to it.
Yeah.
But for me, it seems like Amazon are banking on how successful The Boys is, and maybe seeing how successful the Harley Quinn animated show is being as well. So I think they're riding on that wave with this full rated R stuff. But it looks kind of cool to me. I've not read Invincible, and I'm so with Robert Kirkman's stuff because I'm, Walking Dead is good in some parts, and other parts it's just a dull to get through. So I'm interested, but at the same time, I'm unsure because I don't really have a good track record with Robert Kirkman stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I'm not like a big zombie person, so I've never been big into The Walking Dead. There's not been too much aspects of it that attracted me to it, but it definitely did remind me, like you said, of like Harley Quinn, where they're sort of making those animated shows where they're like, hey, this is quite cheap to make, why wouldn't you, kind of thing. And I'm glad to see it because I do want to see, again, 2D animation continue to thrive, especially on television. And it takes us back to those days in which we did have, X-Men and Spider-Man, those animated shows. bit weird how they are all like you said, rated R these days. And yeah, it reminds me quite a lot of like the DC animated stuff that they bring out as well. But
I mean, sorry to interrupt. I think it's a generational thing. I think it's because we are sort of the generation that 2D cartoons were growing up with. So that's the cartoons that we're attracted to. But we're all adults now, while the newer generation, it's primarily 3D animation they watch.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and that's what makes me think that like, that's where it's unfortunate they might die out with us kind of thing. But yeah, I think it definitely makes sense for, again, like comic book properties. I think a lot of the time these characters work best in that medium. And again, we're talking about like CW shows and stuff like that. Some of these costumes and characters just look goofy in these films and TV series sometimes. So, only animation can pull that off sometimes.
Again, going back to Spider-Verse as well with the multiverses.
Yeah.
I think you've got another layer of freedom and creativity that you don't get with live action.
Yeah, it's like, I think Alan Menken said, isn't it, for Disney, he said there's that extra level of disbelief with animation that, if you see somebody singing in real life, you're like, why would somebody burst into song in real life? But in animation, you're willing to buy into that more. And I think that's what has lent itself well to the Harley Quinn show, because especially the fact that they've got such a good LGBTQ stance now as well from what's developed with that show, I think it means that they can take more riskier decisions like that and not come across as too what's
woke,
the word?
In a way?
Yeah, just doing it for
the sake of it.
Yeah.
No, it's all story purposes, which is great.
So, yeah, I think that this show, it looks interesting. It kind of had the same, like you said, vibe of The Boys to me. But, originally I didn't like The Boys trailers either. When before season 1, I was kind of like, this seems like it's trying too much. It just seems like it's trying to be like, oh, look, we're like Deadpool. We're trying to appeal to, all these people who like R-rated superhero films and TV shows. So I was never big into the advertising for The Boys. And then it was just when I saw good things, I watched it. I was like, oh, wow, this has got like much more of a layer to it that, I didn't realize. And it's really good. So I hope that it's a case like that, but it's just not a case of like you got somebody like Eric Kripke like on it like you do with The Boys. You got somebody who, like you said, has worked on The Walking Dead, which I'm already like, with. So, yeah, 50-50 for me. I think, it looks good. I like the look of the character. And like you said, I think there's definitely potential there for that coming-of-age story. It's got J.K. Simmons, which does also mean that I'm a lot more invested in it from the get-go.
I swear, every time they like, he's got a mustache and and silver sideburn, it's got to be J.K. Simmons.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm already sold just by telling me that J.K. Simmons is in an animated series, to be honest. So
playing basically Superman.
Yeah. So, that I think is good. But like I said, I do have a few questions about, like I said, whether it's too much with the gore and violence, it's trying too hard, and whether it does stand out as much, or whether it's going to come across as just, oh, this is just a cheap animation to make, and we're just doing it for the sake of it because it's cheap, which again DC has become infamous for with some of their animated stuff in the past. But see how it goes, see how much Amazon is investing in this, or whether they're just doing it as an easy kind of tag on to The Boys,
because they need an animated show. Amazon, because I think every streaming service now has like one animated show that they're known for, apart from Amazon, really. I don't think.
Yeah, that's true. Because Netflix has made a massive thing out of even just anime. Like they'll have like
they got a big anime selection there.
Yeah, and it's Netflix anime, so Netflix original animes and stuff like that.
Castlevania is really popular on Netflix.
Yeah, they've got they had, what was it called? Voltron, and then they had things like She-Ra and all that kind of stuff. So that a lot of those are really popular as well. So
Disney, obviously, with Star Wars and stuff. So
yeah, that's why I'm surprised that Amazon hasn't, like I said, gone down that route of the Voltron, She-Ra stuff, which is child friendly, but adults can still like as well. So that's just where I question like how big an audience is there for this Invincible series.
Are they actually? I can't remember if it was Amazon or not. But who's doing the Kevin Smith He-Man?
I think that is Netflix. But I'm not sure if I'm just getting mixed up because they did that He-Man documentary series.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's Netflix or Amazon, but I think it was one of the big ones. which I'm super excited to see that as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Netflix because they've done so much about He-Man with that documentary, and then like he appears a lot in those like the toys that made us and stuff like that, isn't it? So I just affiliate He-Man with like Netflix stuff now at the moment. But yeah, it could easily be Amazon because Kevin Smith has had a lot of links with Amazon as well because he was quite involved early on with the boys when they were doing like the Comic-Con coverage and stuff like that. Like he was just there as he does, appearing in photos like, hey, the comic book.
Just talking good shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, Invincible coming from Amazon, and that's going to come out next year, 2021. Now, that's the news, people, but speaking of Amazon, we're going to get into a review now, and that is The Boys Season 2. So let's take it away with The Boys review.
Now, don't be a pussy. Laser my fucking tits.
1, 2, 3, hit it! She's got a whole army of soups. We cost them.
We need more soup!
Shit.
All right, what do we do? We can't just kill everyone.
That's exactly what we're gonna do.
Oh, great. Cool.
Oi, what did I tell you? Don't be a cunt.
Yeah.
And that was one of the last lines of The Boys Season 2. So before we get into this deep dive, guys, I want to say that this is going to be spoiler heavy. Me and Dave basically realized we can't talk about this show without getting into the nitty gritty and all the details and everything that's happened in the past 8 episodes, the past 6 weeks of our lives. So this is again, spoiler episode. If you haven't finished The Boys or haven't seen the show at all, what the hell are you doing?
And I was going to say the same thing.
Get on your couch because it's the best show on TV right now. Watch all of The Boys. So this is your last warning. Okay. Dave, what a fucking show, man. Like, honestly, as I just said, I think it's the best show on TV at the minute. Definitely, I think the best show of 2020 for me. Anyway, it's just hitting on all cylinders. Following from what the accomplishment they did in season 1, which was, like you said, you weren't too sure about it. A lot of it was a relatively new property for everyone to be like, oh, what's this? And it just sort of dominated the landscape for the last half of the year. But so let's start with sort of overall thoughts before we get into deep stuff. What do you love The Boys? I'm sure that's why we're talking about it. But what do you think of like season 2? Overall thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's quite similar to like other streaming shows in kind of like similar to the Umbrella Academy and stuff. You love season 1, so you're invested for the second season, and then it just gives you what you want. It just delivers. So in some ways it doesn't stand out quite as much because obviously you're not as like taken aback as you were the first season, but then you're just grateful and glad that it did nail it. And especially in a year like this in which we need something like that because it's brightened up the year because thankfully we know that they had this pretty much in the can before this pandemic ever kicked off and became a big thing. So yeah, I've loved watching it week to week. It's been a highlight of my week. Every week I think that they've perfectly wrapped up the entire season in a really neat bow. I think they've continued the storylines from season 1 really well, and I think that was apparent from the get-go as well, is the fact that they were already making season 2 and filming it as season 1 ended. It goes to show that there was already that natural continuation, which this felt like. So yeah, I loved it. I think there's been some great moments. I think while every episode wasn't exactly perfect, I think that I enjoyed every episode, and I think that they were all really good. I was looking at the IMDb scores for each one, and I was thinking, yeah, those are fair. They were all like 8 point something, 9 point something. They were all high, but it's not to say that every single one was like a work of art or a masterpiece. There was maybe certain storylines that didn't hit as well as other ones, but I think overall you just can't question the quality of the show as an entirety, because while you might watch one scene and be like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm into that bit, you then immediately have something which is really cool or amazing or just really funny the next minute. So there's so many quotes and moments that I love from this season as well. which, I can't wait to sort of revisit in the coming year or however long we might have to wait until season 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, echoing what you said about they started filming season 2 as season 1 was happening, when they dropped the first 3 episodes of season 2, I think it was that day or the week after they were like, season 3 is happening, and then like a few days later it was like, oh, and we're also doing season 4.
Yeah,
so
and a spin-off.
and a spin-off as well. So they're going to milk this cow as much as they can, and you know what? They can do it because they're giving us quality content. So, yeah, I echo all your thoughts. Overall, it delivers on the promise of what was set up in Season 1 on how this story could continue. I thought it was actually different to Season 1 in a lot of ways. While I thought Season 1 sort of really introduced you to the world and the politics of this world and how it sort of worked and organized, and then it's sort of them trying to take down Vought. But this season, I thought it was way more personal. This season, I thought it was really more focused on the characters and the character arcs they were going through, all their journeys. It's still got all the violence and the gore that season 1 had, but I do think it was not trimmed down in the sense of like the actual graphic nature of it. But I think there was less action scenes overall in this season, but for good reason, because all the scenes you were seeing with these actors, especially Homelander, which we'll get into in a minute, you were just fixed on what they were saying and all their emotions, and like the acting on all of them was just perfect because a lot of it was just done with their faces, not because a lot of the perception of the public eye is in front of them, so they're trying to refrain, and you could see exactly what's going on. So I found this season to be way more personal, really, really personal. And it was interesting because the first sort of 3-4 episodes, I was a bit like, where are we going with this? See, it wasn't like the first season was like, we're going to take down Vought. From the very first episode, it was like, that's the mission. This one, I was a bit like, I'm not too sure where we're going here. But then, it just perfectly lines up. And it goes sort of haywire for the last 4 episodes. So, overall, I'm super happy. And I just kind of hope they do that in season 3, develop from the last 2 seasons, and maybe give us something different, but, still fitting in with what they've been popular for.
Yeah, I think that's what's been impressive about it as well, is the fact that to me, I felt that like, it's a streaming show. It's, one that they're going to want multiple series out of. So, we will be happy with what we get, but it's kind of going to just carry on that Vought storyline. We're still going to be there at the end of season 2 without Compound V being known about, and we might have had some little developments, but they're going to end on a cliffhanger and all that kind of stuff. But no, I was really surprised that they really changed things up. They literally flipped things around so many times in this show, and they're like, from the end of season 1 to the end of season 2, the trajectory and the storylines have completely changed, which I think is fantastic. You're not just there, which again, I think on reflection was like a problem for things like Game of Thrones, isn't it? Where you got to like the 8th season and you're still like, when are the army of the dead going to attack? When is Daenerys going to take the throne? When is the North going to, become independent? And like, it just disappoints because you've had 8 seasons of like that constantly being like built up and built up and built up. So you can't help but just be disappointed by whatever happens. So I think that they've really cleverly, just kept it refreshed. And again, I think that's what's interesting with the Umbrella Academy, is while season 1 and season 2 were like completely different, like they, like you look at what happened in season 1 and you look at what happened in season 2, they were completely different. And I think that worked for that show. But here, like you said, it's season 1 and season 2 are completely different for the boys, but not in the way of like the world was still the same. We were still in the same setting, the same locations. The characters weren't changed at all. There was sort of no amnesia storyline or anything like that. But we were still, like you said, getting very different types of stories. We weren't, season 1, you had the kind of, some of the fun of, Soups. So you had that character, which was played by Haley Joel Osment, where you saw like, touch people and could, tell if they were telling the truth and stuff like that. And you had that old detective show he was in and stuff like that. You didn't have as much as that kind of stuff, but like I said, in trade-off you had more of the kind of like sinister elements of Vought and more of the personal elements for the boys, which, you know, I really loved.
And the soups as well. You know?
Yeah.
For some of the characters that, you know, because in season 1, the majority of the time, the soups were sort of basically the bad guys, you know, and they were made out to be these nasty people in a way.
Yeah.
And you sort of hated all of them. But when you get into season 2, characters that I thought that I hated from season 1, by the end of season 2, I'm like, yo, I really feel for this character. I feel for, you know, what they're going through. Even if some of them are, you know, homicidal maniacs.
No, I think a great example of that is like the Deep, like, you know, of course he does
oh my God.
horrible things in like season 1, and you watch the start of that series and you're just like, wow, this guy is a dick. And by the end of season 2, he is still a dick. But
he's
you
a
can't
different
help
type
but
of dick.
yeah, you can't help but just like laugh at some of the things he says, and in some ways sympathize. But yeah, it just goes to show like progression and that kind of stuff. You know, by no means I don't think anybody watches it or anybody who's writing the show is excusing his behavior. But, you know, it is just a human thing to be like, well, look, you know, these people need to carry on with their lives once they've done something bad. And, you know, we can understand a bit about why they've done it. And you can also have a bit of humor to the character, which the Deep has, because he has that kind of like aspect of him, which is like, oh yeah, that guy was always a dick, you know, like, you know, and then like somebody says something and then he flips it straight away, like, oh well.
I think for me, with the Deep, the highlight has to be his gills being voiced by Patton Oswalt.
That was amazing, yeah. But yeah, I had seen the news stories which said like Patton Oswalt is a mystery character in The Boys, and you kind of just think he's going to play some like vote assistant or something, but they were keeping it under wraps who he was, and you were like, okay, this is going to be something fun. So then as soon as that came up, I was like, oh god, this is it. Like, what an amazing development for Patton Oswalt, and yeah, that character. But the highlight for me again is in that finale, just the like fuck Fresca. that was such a good, and like talking about his wife, he was like, you made me marry this weirdo. And like it just perfectly resembled the character and everything he's gone through throughout the season. I mean, which is
like
great.
You say, he's done shitty things in season 1, and while he's still an asshole in this season, his storyline, that, you know, the story creators are basically telling you this is what happens when corporations manipulate people. Yeah. You know, the manipulation of fame, of stardom, and how they can easily just, you know, throw you out as soon as you're not popular with TikTok and any of this shit anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest things about this show, which I really loved, is its huge mirror to the world. You know, the social reflection of we're going to everything from social media, you know, with Stormfront's use of their own sort of Instagram thing and TikTok and all this stuff, and how you can gain influences, and, you know, the use of the media as well, which is what we're seeing now especially in America, you know, media being used to divide people, to implement fear and all this. So I thought all of that was incredibly like relevant to today, and it's also scarily accurate how they managed to sort of predict everything that's going on right now, when this show was done before the pandemic. Like, it was probably filming the last quarter of 2019. So it's scary how they were like, yeah, this is where our country's going, and boom, that's where the country is right now.
Yeah.
So I found that incredibly powerful, especially there's a scene in, I can't remember, it was episode 5 or episode 6. You know the scene I'm talking about, and it's when, spoiler everyone, Stormfront and Homelander get jiggy with it. But it's when she's saying, you know, you can have like 50,000 followers, but I have 5,000 soldiers. Yeah. And I was just like, fuck, man, that's true, because, you know, I don't want to get too much into actual politics here, but with what's going on with America and the current president and like his sort of followers, in a way you could consider them as like soldiers, because they're so, you know, patriotic about him and will sort of do anything for him. And his philosophies and stuff for that, I found that incredibly powerful to see that and go, wow, they know it, man. They know what actually is going on here.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I was going to mention the same thing, because like you said, but, you know, you don't want to go too much in politics, but it's hard not to, especially, and I think, some people might be like, oh, well, that's too heavy-handed, or they shouldn't do it, but, I think it's perfectly justified. I think in some ways you could say the type of people who are watching the show are maybe that kind of more liberal kind of people anyway, hopefully, but I don't know if anybody would have been turned off this show from that who was American or not. I'm not sure, but like you said, it's crazy the timing of it, and that's again what changed season 1, season 2, where season 1 was kind of making that commentary of like soups in the military and the idea of corporations controlling people, the image thing with Starlight changing her costume. A lot of themes were made in that first season, which was fantastic. But it was never like, this is specifically happening right now. It was just a lot of general, problems with the world kind of thing. So that's what was impressive here, that they like literally zoned in. And I think, like you said, that was one of my favorite scenes as well, is, I have an army. And I thought that was just a fantastic way of showing it. I think we mentioned it before as well, wasn't it? That early scene with Giancarlo Esposito's character, when he said...
Wait, let's just take a moment to appreciate Giancarlo Esposito. Can we just cast him as every villain from now on, please?
Can we order that dessert that he had in the finale right now and just, appreciate him through his love of cuisine?
Oh, God, he's so good. So, yeah, but go on, what were you saying?
Yeah, it's just... when he said that, you're, to Homelander, the mistake that you make is thinking the Vought is, a superhero company when actually we're a pharmaceutical company. Again, that is so indicative of America and the US. And I think it's why it's important that they do it. I think, like you said, some people might not want to get too political about these things, but, I think a lot of people will see it. And we were talking about it before this podcast. There's been stuff that's been made in the past, like, oh shit, they were like ahead of the game on this. And that's where, TV shows and stuff have to do it sometimes, because they're like, well, no, because this is like a dangerous thing. And what better way to do it, to put it in the light of like a crazy sci-fi superhero scenario to show how bad it is. And I think the best example of that for me was the scene with... Unfortunately, I could only see him as Fat Neil from Community, but so if you watch Community, you know what I mean. But the episode that started off with the fan of Stormfront and literally then showing him day by day how he was affected by social media and what he was seeing and hearing from podcasts and different things like that. Thankfully, we're not like a podcast that's spreading hate like he was listening to, but yeah, and then that drove him to like do what he did in that shop, and then perfectly, just spot on, you had that scene then afterwards with Homelander and Stormfront, which goes, we need to put soups in the military. We obviously, our thoughts and prayers go out to that place, where, the man who was tragically shot today. I was like, that is so spot on. That's amazing that they've done that. And I think that is exactly what they need to do. I think it's spot on. I think The Boys is a perfect reflection of Trump America, gun violence America, and pharmaceutical America.
Yeah, just capitalism in general.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's spot on. It hits the nail right on the head, and that's what I did particularly love about this season, as well as the personal aspects as well. So yeah, that I'm really impressed by that. I also just want to talk about, like I said, the personal side of things, the characters.
Let's talk about the characters, man.
I love how much Huey became such a relatable character in this one. I think that in the season 1, he was kind of just, you could relate to him and you could understand everything he was doing, but it was all in the guise of like, he's lost his girlfriend, he's kind of like that nervous guy. This is all like a new world to him. But I think the Billy Joel stuff and the troubles he was going through at the start, it was all really, really, really great stuff. It really made you feel for the character. And I think when he had that conversation in the last episode with Starlight in the car, I thought that was like a really touching moment. And I thought they really rounded off his storyline really well, because it made you understand. Well, the Billy Joel stuff for me was always kind of made sense, because it always reflected what he was feeling. So whatever song he was listening to, it was literally how he felt at that time. Mm-hmm. So when Starlight was just like, what's with the Billy Joel stuff? You were like, well, do you really need to ask? But I think that scene really sort of like highlighted it and brought it back brought it around full circle. So yeah, from the end of the season, I think Huey definitely is one of my favorite characters, just because he also had one of my favorite moments, which was with Lamplighter, when he was just like, he was like, what does he say? You fuck the wife. He's like, don't be the cuck,
you gotta be the one fucking the wife.
Yeah, so that was
good.
amazing.
Oh, that's so good. When he's just watching porn, like just superhero.
That was the equivalent of, because I love those scenes where Huey, like you said, he's that nervous kind of character and like shy and everything, and then he has that moment where he just has to speak out. And the equivalent in season 1, which I loved, was when he was facing off against that religious superhero, and he just went like, "You fucked me," and he was like, "What?" And he was just like, "You fucked me, and I have video footage of it, and I can show everyone." And it was like just out of nowhere, and that's what happened in this season with that whole like Lamplighter situation. It was just hilarious. They just was like, he was like, "Yeah, let's go fuck the wife." He was like, "Respectfully," So it was great.
Yeah, I loved Huey as well. What I love about Huey, like everything you've just said, it's because he is us in this show, basically. You said, season 1, it was all very like us. This is a completely new show for us. It's a new world. We're getting used to it, and it's all very, what's going on? But then by season 2, we're a bit more comfortable with the world, and we're sort of just on this journey with all these kooky characters. And yeah, he did have, for me, one of the most emotional stories. Like, he was the anchor of the show, I thought. Another surprise for me, who I also thought was like the other anchor of the show, and I really sort of related to him in a different way, was Mother's Milk.
Yeah,
like he was a cool character in season 1. He was sort of like this badass. But then season 2, you really feel like his love for his family, and then he's doing this all for them. It's not just because he wants to kill Soups. He's doing this so he can be reunited with his family and not be hunted down and stuff for that. So you really, get into that. And then, that conversation he has with Starlight about his dad and stuff for that. And then, all the OCD stuff with the wipes. So that was all great. And when he's building
again, all post-COVID, which is like weird,
crazy. And then and when he's building the dollhouse, and he's like, "If you knock this motherfucking dollhouse,"
yeah, if I don't get to finish that Victorian dollhouse. I was kind of disappointed by the end of the season. He didn't have that with him though. He had that he had like a soft, like a toy penguin he gave his daughter. I was like, "Where's the dollhouse?"
Yeah, but you could just complete the dollhouse. So yeah, he was great.
I loved when he was also watching Outlander, and they were like, "What are you watching?" He was like, "Nothing." It was like a scene where he was watching Outlander, and Butcher just was like, "What are you doing?" He was like, "Nothing."
Yeah, he's great. But for me, I think my favorite character is, even though he's the villain, is Homelander. Because Anthony Starr, wow. Yeah. I think he definitely gave the best performance of the season. Like, the amount of acting he had to do with his face alone, the little twitches and stuff that he's got, his eyes and his lips and stuff, is insane acting. Like, you really feel the raw emotion and the hatred coming off him. And then the more emotional stuff with the soup that can turn into different people.
Oh yeah, doppelganger.
Yeah, the doppelganger. That was so weird, and arguably one of the most disturbing scenes I've ever seen with milk.
Yeah, but that scene, I think, like, that is like worthy of the history books, because of the performance, the way he sells that, the look on his face when he's looking at himself is like, the managing to pull that off is amazing.
Yeah, and then you throw in, the storyline with his son and Rebecca's son, That's
Ryan,
that's incredibly powerful, and he's there because he's an asshole, and he's an asshole, but there's this small part of him that you do think, no, he does love his son, like he does. There is feeling there is emotion there for his son, and he does, in his own fucked up way, want the best for his son.
Yeah.
So that's what, again, you're giving these villains who are villains in season 1, you're giving them so much more emotional weight and depth that you're in a way sort of rooting for them, but you're not, because they're still doing horrible things. But then you see, but he's also incredibly vulnerable, even though he's arguably the strongest one physically. He can take down pretty much any super he wants. he's probably the most vulnerable because he's so easy manipulated, whether it's by Giancarlo Esposito's character or how easily Stormfront manipulates him into getting what she wants. The manipulation of, that the fact that maybe Rebecca can manipulate him a bit because of his attachment to the son. So there's all that there, and it just shows how vulnerable a character he really is. And then that last scene, where, again, spoiler alert, Rebecca dies, and he's covered in blood, and he's there, like, deciding what to do, whether he should take his son, or they'll leak all the information, and then he starts hearing the chants in his head of Homelander, home, and he's really deciding whether to be even more corrupt, because he's never had a childhood anyway. He's never had anyone who's cared for him. He wants all that public attention, or does he go for the love of his child and kill everybody here?
Yeah, and that's the debate he has throughout the season, isn't it? He has that moment where you kind of watch it and go, "Did he just kill everyone?"
Oh,
and then
in
he's in that crowd.
That rally that they were at, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and yeah, I think that's really interesting part of his character because, again, that's why, you're right to say, he's one of your favorite characters because he is such a core to the show because it shows after season 1, you were like, well, after he kills Stillwell, is there, how is the dynamic going to work there? And, they perfectly carry that on by saying, well, he's struggling, because he hasn't got that, attachment to her. So they literally show that in the way that, he's getting somebody to literally replicate her, and then that turns badly, and like bit by bit, Queen Maeve says at the end, you literally have lost everyone you love. And I think that's what is most sinister and scary about that end scene where it like zooms in on his face during the press conference, is that he literally has nothing left. So that's where you do have to wonder, is it enough now with the public loving him? Because he literally has got nobody. He would cling on to Maeve and he would cling on to these other characters.
But they've all detached him. They've all like, fuck you.
Yeah, or just literally burnt to a crisp. Yes. In the case of Stormfront. Did you get Darth Vader vibes from that kind of?
Yes, I got like burnt Anakin with like no limbs.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting.
She's babbling some German at the end there.
Yeah, I'm expecting like a Darth Vader type suit with her inside next season maybe, but probably more likely I would like to see her just sort of like dangling. Just as a body.
Like we saw in like Darth Vader in Rogue One, where he's just in that tube thing.
So pretty much Homelander's kind of like that guy who comes in the cloak and he just, yeah. And she's just there speaking German, in riddles of German. But it wouldn't be outside the realms of possibility for the show. I think they said Homelander is a fantastic character. I think the moment as well he has where he's like the flower scene when he's like looking at them and then literally just cut to that like burnt down trailer and you instantly know what's happened and he plays it so well. And I'm always impressed by, I think I don't know if you find this, but to me, actors who are on these Amazon series, I don't know if they allow them more freedom or they just recruit the right people, but I never get the same sort of performance from like these Netflix series. Like, not to say that Netflix doesn't have good performers and good actors, but they seem to take it to another level with Amazon series. I had the same kind of experience with Man in the High Castle. There were certain characters and actors in that who felt that they like embodied the character and they very much were like, they understood them to their core. And I think Anthony Starr is very much the same. He loves that kind of stuff. He's promoting the show all the time on his socials. And,
he's from New Zealand, the guy.
Yeah.
And I was shocked when I first heard that. I was like, whoa, you got that accent nailed for a New Zealand.
Yeah.
Like,
and I love the parallels between him and we were talking about Chris Evans earlier, the fact that he's like, got black or brunette hair and it's like usually shaved, so they put this like blonde wig on him, kind of like how Chris Evans does for Captain America. And then you kind of see from the start of the season his like sideburns turn more and more like brunette as the series goes on from where it's like being bleached or whatever at the beginning. So yeah, he has some fantastic moments, and like I said, I think his psyche is just such a fascinating like aspect of the character, and I can't wait to see how it progresses.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to be here all day. We're going to talk about all the characters. But I don't think we can finish this, though, without talking about Butcher.
No, yeah, exactly.
We got to talk about Butcher now.
Talking about New Zealand, him and a few other Kiwis, appear
this was also somewhat of a Lord of the Rings reunion.
Yeah.
Which was quite cool to see John Noble see him back acting again.
More disappointed father and son relationships.
Butcher again, man. We much like Homelander, we started peeling back so many layers to him. As season 1, he was portrayed as this, again, sort of an asshole, but a lovable asshole in a way because he had so much charisma to him. But at times there was a bit of a quite one note to him in a way. But not in season 2. They were like, no. We got his wife in here. We got his relationship with his father in here. His relationship with I can't remember what the lady from the bureau.
Oh yeah, I always forget her name as well.
But
the CIA operative, basically,
agent lady. Yeah. And then we're going deeper into his actual personal relationships with the rest of the boys. So, man, they knocked it out the park for me. So excited as a fan of the comics that they brought in Terra, the bulldog. I was like, as when he came out, I was like, yes, fucking Terra.
Yeah. And they also had that reference to that's from the comics as well, isn't it? When he's just like, tell me when he dies and I'll piss on his grave. Yeah. And like in the comics, he literally just pisses on his like dad's body. It's like, wow.
He does, yeah.
So I'm interested if that will happen.
Yeah, it's a dark relationship between those two. And that scene, it's only that one scene with John Noble, but fuck, man, that was a powerful scene. And you really felt like the abuse between the two of them, Yeah. And the fact that
you understood why Butcher is so hardened and why he is the way he is.
Because his dad was a complete asshole to him, and he made him that hard in a way. But he resents his father as well because obviously what happened to his brother, which is still I still think there's more to that story as well with Butcher's younger brother. I still think there's a bit more we can explore there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the same with Huey, isn't it? Something about his mother, and then Butcher, something about his brother. They both have these sort of unresolved family issues, which I think they're leading up to something.
Yeah, definitely. And then it was great to see, all his talk about Rebecca in season 1 to then finally deliver on that emotion. You really could see they were, the love for each other, that was definitely there. But she also had, the mother's love for her child, and he didn't want, as he says, some little cunt freak, soup freak. Yeah. Which, when he said that, I was like, oh, that was one of those oh shit moments. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, that was incredible, powerful dynamic as well. Like he wants Rebecca, but he doesn't necessarily want the kid. But she's not going to give up the kid because that's her son. And then you throw in Homelander in that situation, and you got a whole bucket of mess. But I thought the way it was done and then how it eventually ends up, as I said, as we started this review, it's talking to the younger kids saying, don't be a cunt.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought was great, is this from the start of the season, you had that, soup freak calling him that. And then literally by the end, he takes on that slight paternal responsibility. So I think that was a great development for his character. And it made sense then with the father relationship that he kind of saw how being a dick to, your child or even somebody else's child can sort of come across. So that's why he does the right thing and going like, well, I might not be the right father figure, but I can still set this kid on the right track. I can still kind of be a mentor to him, help him. But yeah, it's great how he comes around to Ryan, that he doesn't just like write him off like he did at the beginning of the season. Yeah. So it shows like how much he changes as a character.
Because he realizes that kid could possibly turn out like Homelander. So in a way, he's got a responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah.
And also, in terms of the main cast, I just want to mention Starlight. I think that she really leveled up this season. Mm-hmm. I think last season she was kind of like, she was a good character, but sometimes I think the actress was still finding her feet a bit in terms of the character, and she wasn't always like on top form. But I felt that this season she really brought her A game or A train, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, she just was like a lot more fleshed out. There was a lot more to her. It wasn't just this kind of like, oh, she's religious, wannabe superhero. There was a lot more layers to her. I thought that her scenes again with Huey were fantastic. That scene at the vending machine was just a pure. I've got to stop with these puns now. I was going to say a pure almond joy. That's just terrible. I'm sorry.
Come on, Dave.
Yeah, but it was a great scene. It was really like affectionate relationship that they had throughout this. So when he saved her, like in the last but one episode, like that was a really nice moment. But yeah, it's again showing like how those things come back later on, which you gotta love. So the almond joy thing comes back with Black Noir. And the Girls Get It Done campaign comes back when they're literally kicking the crap into Stormfront.
That fight scene with all the girls against Stormfront. Oh,
yeah.
God, so fucking good, man.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was the highlight of the episode for me. I was just like, yeah, this is fucking great. It was real fist pumping moments. Like,
yeah. I do have to laugh. I like how people like point out how Maeve just always appears from nowhere in these situations. They're like, where is Maeve? Like, why is
she's
she
got
just...
an invisible plane.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what she's got. Man, again, this is gonna be a long one, but I have to talk about Maeve as well. I couldn't believe how much I actually connected with her character in this season. You know, she was quite, even though she was sort of really taking a step back in season 1, she wasn't in the limelight, but they really put the spotlight on her in this season with, you know, her LGBTQ relationship with it, and all of that coming out, and Homelander, you know, just saying it like that, then how she deals with that, and eventually, you know, her sort of redemption in a way. So yeah, I was surprised with how much I like Maeve's story, and again, Frenchie as well, and Mika. Basically, literally all the characters all served a great purpose, all had great story arcs, and all, you know, had a beginning, middle, and end, and it all tracks, and it all concluded in a really nice way. But at the same time, there's still more layers to peel. And there's a few more doors that have been opened for season 3 and, like they've said, season 4. So I can't wait. I think this is like probably like near 9 or a 10 for me this season. Just wonderful, wonderful shit.
Yeah. Go back to our old system we haven't used in a while, isn't it? It's a cape, cowl, and a mask, definitely.
Yeah, cape, cowls, and mask. This one, full on board.
Yeah. I think the only one I would say lastly is in terms of characters, and I think is probably the biggest spoiler, is Victoria Newman. I think that was a fantastic reveal as well. Like, I didn't see that come in. I don't know about you, but they perfectly set that up, and I'm really excited for where that goes.
Yes.
Because, again, we're talking about the politics. You know, what better way to show somebody who's playing literally both sides of the coin, being like, you know, like, oh, yeah, I'm in support of, like, all this, like, you know, superhero under, you know, controls. You know, I'm against all of that, them having too much power and that kind of stuff, and we need to control them. But then at the same time, obviously, she's
a soup.
Got some sort, you know, she's got some sort of links with Vought, and she's a soup as well. So yeah, you got to wonder whether she's just doing this all as a pursuit of power, which I think is again perfect with like what the show tends to do with their characters and, you know, their villains, etc. So I think that's fascinating. I think the fact that Huey is in with her, that could mean that we're going to get...
he's going to be working for her, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it'll lead to a kind of like similar situation to season 1 of like, you know, oh, we've uncovered this thing which is like hidden within Vought, you know, this Compound V. So whereas now, you know, it might be uncovering like the hidden agents in the government and Vought, and potentially more Nazis, I am assuming as well. Because,
way more Nazis in season 3.
Yeah, probably some flashbacks maybe to how it all began and that kind of stuff, I'd imagine, because there was so much about Stormfront. And
there's still, I still think they didn't really cover all the grounds involving like Liberty and all that stuff. Yeah,
because Soldier Boy is in the third season as well, isn't it? So if he's that like first soup, then they got to go down some sort of like
Soldier Boy,
his story kind of stuff.
Of course, that's a play on Captain America.
Yeah, exactly.
So good. All right then. So yeah, we've both given it capes, cowls, and masks. Top marks from both of us here. So, guys, I mean, if you've listened to this review, I would assume you've seen The Boys. If you haven't, I'm sorry we spoiled it for you, but go watch the show anyway. Season 1 and 2 on Amazon, all 16 episodes ready for you to binge.
And you don't necessarily have to binge it either. It's also enjoyable to watch week to week.
Yes.
As we discovered with this show.
Much, much better to watch week to week, if you ask me. But we're going to get out of here now, Dave. So, before we head out, where can the people find you?
They can catch me on Twitter at David Osger, and on Instagram, which I use, which is David Oscar 91. And yeah, writing stuff on the various websites and stuff like that as well. So I'm sure there's some superhero-based linked stuff all coming up very soon, which should be exciting.
Well, yeah, we got Mando Season 2 coming up, so keep an eye out on Fresh Cut for them reviews.
Yeah, definitely.
But you can find me on Twitter at SweatyJake, and then follow us, Cape Cowls and Mask, on Twitter at Capes Cowls Mask, and find us, like us on Facebook. And you can find this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and a few other major streaming services. So get out there, like, subscribe, do whatever you got to do. Show us to your friends. But until the next show, guys, take it easy and stay safe.
Stay safe, guys. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.